wonderful girl. Unique things.
Okay, and I will also have these recorded. So if you need to study for the quiz, you can always subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Put my analytics up, guys.
I subscribe.
I think I have 8 subscribers. I'm doing really well.
I'm one of your subscribers. I'm serious.
Okay, now, just as some quick review. All right, I know we've done this a million times, but we're going to do it a million times more. When you look at a word, specifically a verb, you would tell me some information about it, meaning characteristics of that verb. What are one of those characteristics, Tim Jin?
Number.
Okay, so I could ask about the number of a verb. What are my options for number? Robert.
Singular.
Good. It's either singular or plural. Okay, so that's one of the characteristics. What's another characteristic of a verb that I could potentially ask for, Zach?
Tense.
Tense, yes. Okay, think of tense as time. Okay, now, in Latin, does anyone know how many tenses there are?
5.
Up
7.
6. There are 6.
I was closer.
Okay.
I got it.
There are the present, the imperfect, and the future. There's also the perfect, the pluperfect, and the future perfect.
What is perfect?
What is the pluperfect, Tiff? Did you just ask that? Okay, I'm not going to get too much into it. We will talk about it eventually, but think of it this way. Okay, the word plus in Latin just means more, and the word perfect just means complete, or, completed, right? So it's just more completed. And you would translate that as like had, right? So if I were to say, I had eaten when my mother walked in. Okay, there are 2 things going on here. There's had eaten and my mother walked in. Okay, now you kind of have to think of this as a time spectrum. Walked in, that's just the simple past. So in terms of the time spectrum, my mother is walking in. Mumsy is over here. Okay, now the eating. Did the eating happen before my mom walked in or after? Before. So it's more perfect than your plain old perfect. So the eating goes over here. It's a time spectrum. So it's more perfect than the perfect tense. So it just indicates something that happened further back in the past than just the regular past. You guys use this tense all the time. You're just probably not aware of it. Right? It's technically called the pluperfect. I think they call it that in English too. I'm not entirely sure though. Does that answer your question, Tiff?
I think they put up perfect.
How many times?
Wait, so why is it more perfect?
I'm not
Oh,
sure.
can you
Why is it what?
delete that?
Why is it more perfect?
Why is it more? Oh, I can put it back.
It's more completed. Like,
Like,
It's more.
so it's more past than just the regular old perfect, right? So if I were to say, you had taken the test when Dr. Faye cried.
will he ever cry?
Right? So think of it this way. What happened first? Did Dr. Faye cry or did you take the test first?
The sentence was you were taking a test before Dr. Faye.
You had taken a test.
Had taken a test, so then,
The keyword is had.
yeah.
The key word is had. The had makes it more past than Dr. Faye's crying.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like Miss Slade was born when, when the world was created. The world had been created when Miss Slade was born.
The world had been. So you're saying
Like
the world had been created first and I was born later?
Yes.
Yes.
How much later?
The world was created
So that is
because of
before a thing that happened in the past.
Miss Slade.
Say that one more time.
So imperfect is something that is done before another thing happened in the past.
Yes. Yep. It's just more. It's like more pasty than like another
So
past.
there's only perfect in genders of other things that have been stated?
Not necessarily. Sometimes you can have a sentence with just a pluperfect in it, but it's going to make sense within the context of what you're dealing with.
Well, how do we know as a pluperfect or perfect if there's only one?
Endings. It's all in the word.
Miss,
That's why Latin's fun, because the answers are all in front of you. You just need to know how to find them.
Miss Slade
Yeah.
had been alive when Rome fell.
Miss Slade had been alive when Rome fell.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was already alive and then Rome fell. I was alive first, yes.
Poor Rome.
Or Rome. Okay.
Miss Slade,
So we've got number. We've got tense, which we just talked about. Tense is time. What's another characteristic? Yeah, person.
It's like, will you electrify us if someone said that gender?
No, I would just correct and say that gender is with respect to nouns, not verbs. All right, now I know it's a little hard because you guys are still in your first year of Latin and kind of categorizing things can be a little bit confusing. But if you were to say that in Latin 3, for example, then I might electrocute you all.
Electrify me.
Palpatine, the Palpatine legging.
Yes, exactly like that. Okay, so those are the 3 characteristics we know of. I'm just going to mention the other 2. There's voice, okay, and that's the difference between active versus passive. We'll get there. We're not quite there yet, though.
Is it the same as
Right.
English?
That's the difference between, like, I am eating the soup and the soup is being eaten.
Wait, is it the same as English? Like,
I would
jumped
imagine.
on a plane, the plane was jumped out by me.
Well, that sentence does not make sense in English, but yes, I think you're on the right track.
So this is the same as English.
that's some like Chuck Norris stuff like that. Like the plane
Like, I
jumped
stole
on me.
Arwen's watch. Arwen's watch.
Plane was jumped out by me.
Okay, and then the last characteristic that I'm just going to mention is something called mood. There are 3 in Latin. I'll write them here so you see them.
Nice.
But for now, we're only really going to be functioning in the indicative. Okay, so there's the indicative. We've seen another. The imperative is a mood. Those are commands. And then there's another mood called the subjunctive. Those of you who know Spanish might know the subjunctive, because Spanish has the subjunctive.
Are you going to explain?
What they do? I can do that very briefly. So the indicative is kind of reserved for like facts, things that are happening, have happened, and will happen, definitely. The imperative is just simply commands, right? So do this, don't do that. And the subjunctive is used for hypotheticals, if, could, would, should, might, or may statements. Okay? Also something called like a, so in Italian, like if you want to say, let us go, you would say andiamo, right? Let us go. Let us go. It's like a suggestion. It's not like an actual thing. Okay, that's also,
Let's go to vivere a Babylon. Let's go to vivere a Babylon.
oh my gosh.
Wednesday.
Ayya.
Let's go to vivere a Babylon. Let's go to that.
80th generation Italian.
80th gen. Probably says bruschetta too. It's bruschetta. Okay.
But like, wait, you know Italian?
Not much.
Do you know it?
Wait, Miss Slade.
Not much.
So you know it.
Miss Slade, can I ask you something?
I suppose you're gonna do it anyway. What do you want?
Alright. So do you know Italian cheese starts with M?
Mozzarella.
How do you say that?
I'm not taking that bait.
Come on, say it. You gotta say it. If you say it one way, then it's good. If you say it another way, I don't know, not so much.
You Italian is coming out of him.
No,
Munster.
no, it's mozzarella.
Yeah.
It's mozzarella.
Mozzarella.
So now,
Ew, mozzarella.
the tense that we're gonna be dealing with is called the imperfect tense. All right, this tense is super easy. Yes,
Sorry, I missed what the should be said.
subjunctive, hypothetical. Yeah. Okay, those are very, very basic though. We'll go more into what those are eventually.
That sound like a you.
Okay, so the imperfect tense. Now, there are a couple ways to recognize them. Actually, wait, we won't get there. We'll not do that. Let's do it this way. Okay, so the imperfect tense endings. Well, actually, let's do some review. So the present tense endings, which we know. Okay. How do I say I?
O, S, T.
Or M.
Yep, O. Well, for the present, it's just O. So O, S, T. These are endings, so we're going to put our dashes here. And then we've got mus, we've got tis, and we've got nt.
Wow, it's almost like we didn't have a quiz on this.
What's eating? L-S-T, U-S-T-I-S-T.
Okay, now the imperfect tense,
That was me.
the endings are very interesting. They're actually pretty simple.
Bam. 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 Bam.
I feel like we went over this for the.
We did.
No, we did this in quality.
Wait, we
It's
did?
on the notes.
Yeah, we did.
I don't remember that.
That.
Bombs.
Vamos.
Okay.
Dominoes.
Repeat after me, please. O-S-T, mus, tis, nt.
Oh, excuse me.
One more time. O-S-T, mus, tis, nt.
OST, Mustis,
Bombas, bot, bamos, batis, bont.
Bombas, Bot, Bombs, Botis, Bont.
Okay, one more time. O-S-T, mus, tis, nt.
OST, Mustis,
Bombas, bot, bamos, batis, bont.
Bombas, Bot, Bombs, Botis, Bont.
Okay, now, I would like you to take a moment. I'm going to zoom in here. What is the uniting factor for all of these endings? What do they have in common, Jack?
B-A.
He shared the first two letters are BA.
Yes, okay, so they all have a BA in the form. Okay? That's super helpful. Now look at the rest of it. Aside from this, which is M, is that sometimes first person?
Yeah.
Right, because we say O or M can mean I. This is one of those instances where M means I. Okay, is S second person singular?
Yeah.
Is T third person singular?
Yeah.
Is mus first person plural?
Yeah.
Is tis second person plural?
Yeah.
Is nt third person plural?
Yeah.
Okay, so really all we've done is just added a tense marker. All right, that's what we call BA. We call it a tense marker.
They still mean the same thing.
How do you, how would you translate?
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna get to that. All right, so ways to recognize. Imperfect verbs have a BA tense marker. All right, meaning the ending has a BA included in it. Okay, now in terms of translation, I call it the wasing.
Oh, yeah.
The wasn't,
I was eating.
Okay, meaning that anytime you see a verb that has a BA tense marker in it, you're going to translate it as was or were-ing.
I was working.
I was having Latin class.
How do you know that the B is in part of the word?
I
or
was
the,
you
end?
probably.
Typically, it's going to be preceded by a vowel. And knowing your principal parts is going to help you here. So the process of conjugating in the imperfect tense, it's the same as conjugating in the present. You find your present stem from the second principal part, and then you just pop on these endings. And you'll be able to kind of see. It'll become more clear when we do more examples, but that's a good question. So kind of like keep that in your mind. Okay. So in the past, I've said the imperfect, right? What kind of sheep go ba? Imperfect sheep. But present sheep don't say anything at all. Okay, just to help you remind you of your tense marker. Okay, so let's see how these are used. Can I scroll? Yes, maybe?
It's subjugated. It's a hypothetical. You might be able to.
May I scroll? Yes. I would be able to scroll. Were you able to write fast?
I'm finished.
Subjectives.
That sounds like a
No problem.
Okay, yeah, let's do some examples actually.
you have to.
Well, do we have to, he says. Yeah, you have to.
That was me.
Only
Tim, I feel like you're gonna be that one guy in the future who's gonna be like,
Teacher,
What?
Miss Lee, if Tim was your professor, would you still take the class?
you would do that.
What?
Like in a college course? Tim J.
If Tim was my professor?
Versus Tim J.
I love Tim as my professor.
I'm not gonna brace that question with an answer.
This slate especially is interesting.
And
Tim
he'd
was
be like,
teaching
yes,
English
you're all
grammar.
very.
The way that the
you
light is
talk
on
to
your
the
face makes it
principal.
look like kind of a scary story.
Rob, what did you say?
Okay, now, repeat after me, please. Perviam apiam, iter, facie bant. All right, so, pretty simply put, my verb is over here. Okay? Does it have a BA in it?
Yes.
Yes. So what tense are we dealing with here?
The was imperfect.
The imperfect, also known as the wasing.
Was me.
Or
Okay, good. All right, now, perviam apiam. Is that what is that grammatically?
It's a
Careful. It's a prepositional phrase, so we would either make it purple or circle it. All right, now, iter, I'm just going to tell you, is my accusative direct object here. Okay, so facie bant, nt. Who is nt?
They.
They. Okay, so my translation is going to be they were making a journey. I know it sounds kind of weird, but we're going to go with it because it's literal. Perviam apiam, through the, or actually not through, we're going to say along here because that's totally a legal move. Along the Appian Way. That's a famous road.
What is the everywhere?
It's a very famous road. You know how they say all roads lead to Rome? Well,
the road
Oh.
to Rome is Appian.
All of these roads.
that's one of them, yeah. That's like the major,
From.
and it kind of goes through the city too, I believe, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
What country do you think is the most like a modern Rome?
The most modern Rome country.
Most modern.
How do you
Rome-
mean?
Like, what is most similar to Rome in the way that it is considered with like the
Like, used to
Rome's
be
in the
part
center
of
of the
them?
world is the
I think that depends entirely upon whom you ask.
What would you say?
Because like if you would ask an American, they might say that America is like that. But I don't know if that's entirely true. Because America, it also depends on like, are we considering the world and like foreign policy and like the global sphere of things? Like does America have a hand in all of that? Right? But it's not technically an American empire, right? They're just a big player in the foreign policy
No,
and all
you're
that
right.
stuff.
You're-
Would
I
you say
feel like-
Italy? Because that's where Rome is.
Rome is home. It's an interesting question. I don't know. It's kind of a tricky question to ask. Okay, let's try one more example.
It's like, how do you pronounce Trevis?
Just like that.
Like Trevis or Trevis?
Tribus. It depends. Can you roll your R's or not?
Tribus.
Tribus.
Yeah, tribus. That's exactly what it is.
Tribal.
Okay.
Bus.
Repeat, please. Ad urbem.
Ad urbem.
Tribus diebus. Advenire. Volebat. Okay. Now, my verby verb is over here, right? And it's got a BA in the form. What tense are we dealing with? Imperfect. What kind of sheep go ba? Imperfect sheep. Okay. Now the rest of this ad orbem is a prepositional phrase, so we would either circle it or make it purple. Tribus diebus. Does anyone know what case that might be?
I don't know.
Ablative.
No. Think about what you know. I will tell you that dies diei is a fifth declension noun. So what is that ending? EBUS.
Oh, dative word. Dative word like outlet.
It's dative or ablative. Now, in chapter 12, we talked about different types of ablatives. Okay, this is a specific kind. Does anyone know what kind of ablative this is? This is an ablative of...
Man.
No, because it's not in the way of 3 days.
I have the notes, I have the notes.
It's an ablative of time. Time when or within which. Okay. And advenire, it ends in ire. What kind of verb is this? Infinitive, good. Okay. So volebat. Who's my subject if it ends in T?
He shear it.
He shear it. So for simplicity's sake, we'll just say he. He was wanting to advenire, to reach or arrive at, ad urbem,
The city.
yeah, the city in 3 days. Okay? So far, so good?
My type.
Okay, now, let me just talk about some quick things here. Now, up here I mentioned, sorry. All right, there is an imperfect tense, yeah? That's what we're talking about right now. Is there also a perfect tense?
Yes.
There is. Okay, now think about your roots, right? Prefixes. If you had Miss Scoville, she's probably talked to you about this before. What does im do to a word?
Negates the action.
It negates it. All right, so let's talk about that for a hot second. The word perfect, I told you what it meant before. What does it mean?
Completed.
Completed, yeah. So imperfect means
Not completed.
not completed. Okay, another way to think of that is continuous. Right, it's continuous action. That's how the imperfect is used.
Like we were driving.
Yeah, we were driving. We could still be driving. It's not specified. But if I were to say to you, we drove, is that action done?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I was laughing. Could I still be laughing?
Yeah.
Yeah, but what if I said I laughed?
You cannot be.
It's done. I can't be laughing anymore. All right, so that's the difference, between the perfect and the imperfect. Okay, one is completed action, one is not completed action, also known as continuous. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
What if you say like, I laughed, then, and I'm still laughing? Would that be?
I mean, you would still use the perfect tense, and then you would use the the present. Because I am laughing is a viable translation for the present. You would just have two clauses. Right, so it would be specified, but the tense would still be perfect. It would just be kind of weird, I guess. Okay, any questions so far?
No.
No, is this pretty straightforward? Okay,
10 minutes left in class.
I know.
So let's have fun.
No, never.
Yeah, you gotta get on that grind set, man.
What?
You have to start memorizing.
Yeah. Miss Lee, I have a question for you.
Yes.
How about we make it so Tim has to memorize the poem when you don't?
That sounds like bullying with extra steps.
Well, bullying with extra steps is exactly what we need.
Somehow, that's not very character career of you.
You never said how good my character had to be. which is what I stick to.
Delegate candidate.
Exactly.
Delegate candidate.
Therefore, I'm instating the values of character before career.
Oh,
No,
cool
I
to
had
you.
delegate, I had delegate.
Okay, now.
Candidate. He's a law candidate.
Yoo-hoo. There are two irregular verbs you need to be aware of. Okay, the first one, in all Romance languages, the verb to be is irregular. So we've got sum, esse. Does anyone remember the last two principal parts? Good, good. Know your principal parts. They will save you later. Futurs. You won't have to rememorize them, so when I torture you with conjugating verbs and translating, you will know automatically what things are.
You are already tortured.
So then torture you more.
It's just a different font, a different style of torture.
Yeah, different, yeah. Same thing, different font.
Instead of verbs, it's
Okay. Now, in the present tense, you've seen these before, okay? It's sum, est. Can anyone finish the rest? Jack?
Sumus esti sum.
Booyah. Good.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah, radical dude.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the imperfect, the form of the word is eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratis, and erant. Okay, now what's nice about it is that the endings are still the same, so you know who is doing what, right? O or M means I, S means you, T is he, she, it, mus is we, tis is y'all, and tis they. Okay, but unfortunately there's really no rhyme or reason as to how these forms are formed, so you just kind of have to memorize them.
It should just be like bomb, boss, bomb.
it should just be
Nope.
the same one word forever. And people just communicate telepathically what they're saying.
But you still need to have words for things.
No, you don't.
Okay,
It's
now,
just pictures.
sum is I am, es is you are, est is he, she, or it is. Sumus we are, est is y'all are, and sunt they are. Okay, now in the imperfect, eram is I was being, eras is you were being, erat is he, she, or it was being, eramus is we were being, eratus is y'all were being, and erant is they were being. Okay? It's got the was or were included in the translation. Thank you. Okay. All right, there's one other verb you do need to be aware of. Possum, posse, potui, to be able.
Sounds like a possum.
I do want.
All right, there is no fourth principal part though, because it is irregular.
Miss
And I don't think you can actually say to be abled. Like what?
I was able.
Yeah, you can't like make it passive. It's kind of weird. Yeah.
Did the Romans know what a raccoon was?
Well, it's possible that they knew what a possum was. Aha, ha, ha. I've actually had a t-shirt idea and I've wanted to make it for so long. You know the Rosie the Riveter, We Can Do It,
Yeah.
right? I want it to be like a possum dressed up and in the same pose as Rosie the Riveter, but on it it says possum. Like, oh, possumus, we can do it. Like, isn't that funny?
It's a very good.
It's such a selective joke.
It really is, but if you can understand it, thank you, Latin teacher.
We would all buy your merch, Miss Slade.
Yeah.
What?
Should we make merch for your YouTube channel?
Latin merch. I've thought about it.
You like Latin?
No, I hate it. That's why I teach it.
Would you get in trouble if
Are
you
you
started trying to
good
sell
at Latin?
stuff?
No.
No.
I mean, I don't think so.
We don't.
I mean, it depends on what I'm selling.
Is there
Like, if I'm selling drugs, yeah, I'd probably get in trouble. But selling t-shirts, probably fine.
their
That's not
teacher
very
handbook?
character before career.
They never-
Yeah, it says,
Good character.
do not sell t-shirts or Slade paraphernalia.
What's your name?
Not allowed.
It's just for just about you because you've tried to do it so many times.
Yep, it's the Slade clause. Okay. What?
Here's something weird.
Who's talking to me?
Who's Tom Jim?
That's so stupid.
I just
Huh?
bad joke.
What?
Curse
People haunting you.
Miss Slade, we're charging you this exactly.
That's just Jim haunting you forever.
Jobs are actually being used.
Don't you guys just love Tarzan?
You laugh like SpongeBob.
Okay, so that's the present tense. Possum, potest, potest. Possumus, potestis. Possunt.
Awesome.
Protesters.
Who animal is this?
Don't potest us. Give us quizzes instead. Get it?
Haha.
Ah!
Ah,
Ha
Very funny. Wait, Miss Slade. Miss Slade.
Hmm.
Like, does possum have a, like an English counterpart that means similar things?
Oh, protest us.
Molest us.
Like the
patria.
or quizzes. I get it.
Yeah, potest us. Quiz us. Yeah, that's a dumb joke. That's okay. I tried.
How are you not even a dad and yet you only are able to speak in dad jokes?
It's a coping mechanism. Leave me alone.
Wow. No game.
Miss Slade.
Hmm?
I agree.
Not very character before
They never said it's good character.
Huh?
I said it has to
It's
be.
eating your brain.
Yeah.
Noises.
Well, I him.
Huh?
Oh yeah.
What did she say?
Miss Slade.
You said you're selling chocolates? I always hated it. What do you want?
I remember when they first made chocolates.
Miss Slade.
You know?
Listen,
I know.
Yes?
On my way to school today, I saw Mr. Crane biking behind my bus. And he passed me while I was waiting for the bus, and he said, "Hey Clinton, it's Mr. Crane."
Robert.
Somehow I don't think that that's what happened, but all
I
right.
don't seriously, it actually
like it.
happened.
Was
Robert,
was he
remember
in
when
his
your
pink
dad
pants
stole?
too?
No, he had a red thing, red
He
like
actually
helmet,
does.
and he was like
Clinton are his neighbors. I see them all the
dripping
time.
sweat. I swear.
No, remember when he's walking?
Okay, so big takeaway.
Wait, no, I need to write that.
Instead of talking about Mr. Crane, you could have written it.
Miss Lotto.
Big takeaway.
Oh, thank you, bro. All right, thank you. Mr.
Imperfect is past.
Got it?
No.
So Bobby.
Okay, so the imperfect is a past tense with a continuous or repeated action aspect, right? Was-ing, were-ing, right? Which is different than like Tim was farting versus Tim farted, right? The fart has been executed, it's complete.
Ew.
But Tim was farting in the past and he just, I guess, kept
You
That's
problem.
nasty.
repeating the action.
That's nasty.
That's me, Miss Slade.
Yeah.
Nasty.
Tim is still farting.
Tim is still farting.
Can you believe that was an ancient Roman text?
Yep.
Keep going.
They knew. I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah, Jeff.
Tense marker is BA. Alright? And we call it the wasing.
Or the worry.
Yep, the wasing or worrying, right? Because you wouldn't say you was sitting.
Bye, Miss Slade. Ow.
I didn't say you could leave. All right. What you're gonna do for homework is you're going to submit your notes for a participation grade. In addition to that, you're gonna actually translate some sentences, okay? I will post those on the portal. Complete those both. I will see you all on Thursday.
Happy Thursday.